Now, the academic virtue signalling safe space, permanently frightened, overeducated class has been satisfied with the collapse of civilization. They're like a dying star falling in on itself, and there won't be anything left by the time it's finished. But Ralph, the West built amazing things. Do we need to go back to the vision of Western Enlightenment, which valued beauty and progress in equal measure, and go back to creating the future rather than living off the past?
Well, let me say a quick thing. The reason why I'm in London is because I myself was a participant at the ARC conference. So that's why I'm speaking to you from London at the moment. I have to admit, I'm a huge fan of Konstantin Kissin, but I don't entirely share his view for a very simple reason. And that is, think about this. A couple of weeks ago, you had British people taken hostage by Hamas. Now, how do you think would 19th century Britain have reacted if a ragtag group of terrorists would have taken their citizens hostage? Imagine a Palmerston, imagine a Gladstone, or imagine a Churchill. We all know what the British would have done, right? There would have been whatever would have been the equivalent of a 19th century, early 20th century press conference. They would have stood there, would have said, if you do not release these hostages in the next 24 hours, we're going to flatten everything there is, right? We bomb you back to the Stone Age, or, we take over and you're going to learn your lesson. The British did this in the past. The Europeans did this in the past. And what do we do now? We say, well, we need to negotiate. We need to find a solution. We need to call for a ceasefire. Western civilization no longer has a spine. Western civilization no longer has a backbone. And this is also why we have the problem with migration in our countries. Imagine you are a 15-year-old Muslim boy in London, in Brussels, in Sydney, in Vienna. What is interesting for you? What kind of culture offers you a sense of confidence, a sense of strength? Is it Western liberalism, or is it something else? I mean, to use a crude example, why do you think it is that Andrew Tate converted to Islam instead of becoming a Quaker? And this is something we have to look straight into the face. I agree with you, but the beauty you describe, the inventions you describe, the kind of the Western Enlightenment, or the high life of Western Enlightenment, was a consequence of a tremendous sense of cultural confidence. The same with multiculturalism, right? The British, the Europeans were tremendously multicultural. We went to the furthest corner of the earth. We learned obscure languages. We deciphered hieroglyphs. We were very interested in other cultures. But we also had a sense that, at least for us, one culture was, at least subjectively, superior. And we no longer think this way. And you cannot be an attractive culture if you don't think of your own culture that it is superior. It doesn't mean that others are objectively inferior. It's more like, when I talk about my mother, I think that my mother is the greatest person on the planet. That doesn't mean that your mother is not a great mother, but this is the way how you have to think about your own civilization. And we no longer do this in the West. And getting this confidence back is such a difficult undertaking, and it has to kind of affect everyone. If a couple of, and I enjoyed this conference very much, but if high and mighty intellectuals talk about the crisis of Western civilization, that alone is not going to do it, right? It starts in the schools, it starts in the kindergartens, it starts in all these areas, and we don't do enough there. I give you one other example. In London, in Australia as well, right? You have places named after battles of the past. You have monuments dedicated to veterans in Australia, like for the forts that fought in World War I and World War II. We no longer do this. Right? There are no monuments or streets or places named after Fallujah or after Kabul or something. Like, we are constantly ashamed of any kind of intervention we do in the world. And this is, I think, the biggest problem. And again, I'm a huge fan of Konstantin Kissin, but I think that it's more than just